Hi, it's Dorothy guiding with Scrapbooking Quebec. This week I'm joining the Punched Out Thursday to Die For collaboration. We share ideas every Thursday on what to do with your punches and your dies. I will put links to all the other participants below, so be sure to check out their channels for more tool inspiration. And here's what I'm going to be creating. It's almost like a souped up layered banner, and my jumping off point was a Natalie D'Souza Facebook Live she did for the Scrapbook and Cards Today sampler Facebook group. I will put a link to that below in case you want to check it out. I used a bunch of dies to create this banner: hearts, flowers, and snowflakes, which is kind of a strange mix, but what I'm doing is poking fun at what spring looks like in Quebec, which happens to be very snowy. One more thing, you can create this look using different shapes. It doesn't have to be hearts, flowers, and snowflakes like me. Here's what I'm going to be using. It's material mostly from the Hip Kit Club's December 2021 release. That was called Big Chill. I also threw in some wood grain paper. That's from Simple Stories. And here are the tools. Now, I will talk more about them throughout the process, but I will list everything I use in the description box below. So without further ado, let's get started. And here's what's on my desk. I prepared a frame style foundation page with 3 papers, and I gutted 2 of them. I did that in advance. There is a tutorial on my channel where I explain how to do that, so that will be linked below. You may notice the corners of the white cardstock I rounded. I used a Creative Memories corner rounder. I'm showing you the papers here, including what I gutted from behind the foundation page. Here are some other scraps of paper, including that snowflake vellum from Stampin' Up. I also have some scraps of paper from this metallic paper pad from Tim Holtz. I'll be using the silver scraps. And of course, I have a basket full of tools that I'll definitely be digging into. So the first thing I'm going to do is start cutting up a bunch of shapes. And my banners, I'm going to be creating 2 of them, are going to be based on hearts. So I have 2 heart dies. These are stitched heart dies, and mine came in the January Scrapbook and Cards Today sampler subscription. Obviously, you may not have these, but this can be any heart die. My large one measures 3.5 inches, and the smaller ones 2.5 inches. So I'm going to cut a bunch of these out in different pattern papers. I don't make you watch all of it. But my banners are going to be based on heart shapes, and then I will be incorporating other shapes a little bit later on. So you can see here I have a bunch of hearts. I cut them out in 4 different pattern papers. I also have a small one in graph paper. That's going to be for my journaling. And I also cut some out with scrap cardstock. That's because I plan to back some of my hearts with scrap cardstock so that I can pop them up on foam adhesive a little bit later on. So to create these banners, I start by creating 2 rows with the large hearts that measure 3.5 inches. And I'm placing them very straight across the page, a little bit overlapped. Everything else that goes on these banners will be placed a little bit wonky, but what is straight are the first 3 large hearts. And you can see I placed 2 small ones in that banner already, a little bit at an angle. What I'm going to do right now is cut out my 3 photos, again using these heart dies. Now you see me additioning the photos here. What I did was I saved the negative from hearts that I cut out in the past, and I'm using that kind of as a guide to place on top of my photos just to get an idea what they will look like in the shape of a heart, because it's not obvious cutting a photo out in the shape of a heart. It's hard to kind of position them. So that it was a negative. It was a scrap of paper anyway, so I'm simply using it to help me decide where to cut my photos. And once I made that decision, you can see I cut 1 out in a large heart. That's going to be my focal point, and 2 complementary photos out using the small heart. So now I'm going to show you how I plan to place those hearts within the banner there. So the large one's going to go on the top, again, kind of placed at an angle, and the 2 smaller ones are going to kind of overlap at the bottom left there. Now some of these hearts I am going to back with scrap cardstock. I'm going to back the photos as well as the small hearts, because I am going to want to pop some of these up with foam adhesive. And when I pop things up on foam adhesive, I do like to back them with a bit of scrap cardstock, just so that the pieces don't bow and kind of bend. I use foam kind of little hexagons there called Stampin' Dimensionals from Stampin' Up to pop my pieces up. So I don't have like sheets of foam. That's why I like to back them in this scrap cardstock, because it keeps them nice and flat and solid. So I did that with all the photos as well as the small hearts there. So now I'm giving you an idea how my banners look with the hearts. But now it's time to incorporate other shapes into this layered banner. So I'm showing you a few die sets. These flowers are from a set called Floral Frames, an old one from Stampin' Up. The snowflakes are from a collection called Magical Snowflakes from Echo Park. I also showed you a little leaf die there. That was from Fawn from a collection called Stitched Flower Frames, I think. I will list it below. And what I'm going to do right now is just start cutting out some flowers. So I'm going to be doing it in that snowflake vellum. That's going to be for the large flower. For the smaller flower, I'm using this peach paper, and I'm going to be digging into those Tim Holtz metallic scraps, because I do save every scrap for those leaves. I really like how the leaves show up. I will give you an idea of that in a minute, because those leaves are stitched, and that metallic paper with stitched dies turns out absolutely beautiful. Anyway, what I'm looking for right now is a little poker stick, because my leaf is kind of stuck in that die there, but you'll see what it looks like in a minute. Anyway, you'll also see in the still shots at the end, a lot of these dies have stitched edging around them, so you'll get a better look at that at the end of the video. I stopped the camera and I continued cutting out a bunch of flowers and leaves, and now what you see me doing is cutting out some snowflakes. I used just simple white cardstock for that. These are those Magical Snowflake dies from Echo Park. Once again, I'm kind of using my poker stick to get them out, but you can see there over on my right, I have a pile of flowers, leaves, and snowflakes. So what I'm going to do is incorporate that into my banners. Now, obviously, you can use hearts to create a banner like I did here, but I can also see using circles for this as well. I haven't done it, but I think it's an option anyway. And with regards to the other shapes that I'm incorporating into my banners, I'm using snowflakes and flowers because they pertain to my story. But you can use whatever shapes that makes sense to your story. What I'm saying is you can do this very same look using other shapes. I'm also showing you right there that those flowers, the small ones, I actually put circles in the middle. Those are stitched circle dies from Stampin' Up, and I did it in blue, and I did that off camera. So now I'm incorporating the pieces, and I started with the largest pieces, which were those vellum flowers, and I tucked them in 3 spots. Then I'm coming in with the smaller flowers. I just did that in 2 spots, but I used 3 flowers in the bottom right and in the top left. I'm tucking in a few snowflakes in 3 spots. Again, another visual triangle. I'm kind of creating visual triangles, but different visual triangles. So I put snowflakes in 3 spots. Some of them are under photos and under pieces. Some of them overlap. And now I'm looking for placement for these banners. And you saw me bring out some dies a minute ago. My title is going to be cut out with those dies, and I'll talk about them later. And what I was doing was just making sure that I had enough space in between these 2 rows before I started adhering for my title, because I knew my title would be cut out using those dies. So when you adhere these banners, keep in mind that your title is going to be placed in the middle of these 2 rows, so there has to be enough room between these 2 banners to accommodate the title. When I adhere the banner down, you see me at the top there, I start by adhering the 3 large hearts straight across. Then everything else that is layered on top is going to be kind of wonky. So what I'm getting out now is some twine. That twine is from Fawn, and I want to kind of string it across some of the layers. So I'm putting it behind some of the layers. What I did was I adhered what I had to flat to the page on top of the hearts. That was a snowflake and a small flower. And now what I want to do is the pieces that I plan to pop up with foam adhesive, what I want to do is string some twine behind it. Sorry about the phone ringing. I'm not going to answer it. What I have with the heart there is 2 glue dots. So what I did was I put the twine behind it. I made sure that there was a piece that kind of overlapped on the left-hand side. I also made sure there was enough twine in the middle to create kind of a bit of a loop. And now what you're seeing is me putting, I put twine behind that large photo and I'm adding foam adhesive behind it. So the 2 hearts, one being the photo on the right, the other being the small heart on the left, both of those have the twine behind it and foam adhesive underneath it. So they kind of pop up, and I made sure I had enough twine in the middle to create kind of a loop. You can see as well, I adhered one of the snowflakes behind that photo on the top right, and another one kind of overlapping on the top right, overlapping the photo, that is. Now I'm going to do the same thing for the banner at the bottom of the page. So I have 3 hearts, the large ones that measure 3.5 inches, that I'm adhering straight across the page. Those are going to be the only things that are straight on the banner. Now I'm going to start adhering the layers. So at this point I forgot to adhere those leaves behind the flower in the top left, so I did that, and now I'm working on the bottom. Once again, I'm adhering what's flat on top of the heart. So I did that snowflake there. You may have noticed that yellow adhesive. It's called Sticky Specks by Ecstasy Crafts. It's great for detailed pieces. Now what you see me doing is adhering those 2 photos, kind of overlapping the photos a little bit, how I plan to place them. Once that decision is made, once again, I'm going to adhere my twine behind the photos because these are going to be popped up on foam adhesive. I made sure I had enough twine there. I prefer to cut it too long than too short because anyway, it's just easier to trim it down. So I adhered the twine behind those 2 photos. Now I'm going to pop those photos up on foam adhesive. And then what I'm going to do is make sure I have enough twine in the middle to create a loop, and then work on the cluster there over on the bottom right. Now one of those hearts is going to be popped up on foam adhesive over on the far right as well. Actually, the cluster that I create on the bottom right, I'm not actually going to adhere it right away. I'm going to play around with placement. You're going to see me do that, but I won't adhere it right away because I'm actually going to be putting part of my title in that cluster, and I'm not quite sure how it's going to fit in, so I can't adhere that right away. So what I'm going to do before doing that is start working on my title, including in the middle between those 2 banners. So I'm going to show you a die set there, the one I showed you earlier. It's called a Stitched Alpha die set. It's from Elizabeth Craft Designs. I absolutely love it. The letters are about 1 inch high, so it's a very usable size, and I cut them out with that wood grain paper that I got it from behind the foundation page, and each one of those letters is backed in 2 extra layers of cardstock just to have them pop up a bit, and it's on wax paper. That's how I can play with placement. Now what I'm going to do is use a stamp set. This stamp set came from an old collection, an old Scrapbooking Cards Today delivered kit from a few years ago, and I'm stamping out the word spring. So what I'm going to do with that now, I use that ink there. It's from Versifying Claire. The color is Morning Mist, kind of a dark gray. And what I'm going to do is color it in. This is an alcohol marker from Stampin' Up. I think it's called Sea Foam or something like that. I'll write it in the description box below. I'm not actually sure of the color of it. Basically what I'm doing is simply coloring it in. I showed you how I was doing it. It's pretty easy, but you can see I already did it in advance just to save a bit of time. And what I'm going to do with that is use a stitched rectangle die, again from Stampin' Up, just to cut that out. And that will be kind of placed within that cluster on the bottom right and popped up on foam adhesive. So I just want to play around with placement with all of those pieces right now, because that's going to be a fairly big embellishment cluster there. Anyway, you can see right now what I'm doing actually is I forgot to incorporate my journaling box. So I adhered that graph paper on top of that middle heart there. I don't have a ton of journaling, but at least I will be able to identify a few things. And now I'm working on that cluster at the bottom. So I placed the twine with glue dots behind that heart that I plan to pop up. I'm also popping up the word spring there. Behind that, I placed those 2 flowers. And the word spring is popped up, so the heart has to be popped up as well. And I've got that twine behind there, and I'm happy with that. And I'm just overlapping another snowflake, overlapping the heart there. And now what I'm going to do is adhere the title. So I don't make you watch all of that, but what I do want to point out here is I start with the beginning of the title, and then I went to the end of the title and then kind of filled in the middle. And that way I knew I was centering the title when I adhered it. Sometimes if you start just at one end and go straight down, you might end up not centered. Now what you see me doing is a few finishing touches. So all I did was add those metallic leaves around 2 of the flowers at the bottom. And now I have some enamel dots out. I additioned a few different ones, but I end up going with these kind of brushed metallic dots from Pinkfresh Studio from their Holiday Magic collection, and I'm putting them in the center of each one of those snowflakes. But basically that is it. All I did off camera was a wee bit of journaling. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, I'd greatly appreciate a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, I would be absolutely thrilled if you did. And if you are a subscriber, thank you very, very much. Don't forget to check out the other participants. Their links are listed in the description box below. Have a fantastic day, and I will see you soon on YouTube. Bye-bye.